الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه أجمعين. As promised last week, I have added two slides here for the imperfect verb conjugations. Obviously, what we discussed last week was for the inflection of al-rafa. I've also added one for the inflection of al-nasab and one for the inflection of al-jazm. But what you have to realize and keep in mind is that for al-nasab and al-jazm, there needs to be an agent before the verb, or meaning the verb will not become mansub or majzoom without an agent. But for the sake of simplicity, I have not included any agents here. Perhaps something upon me would be to add just an agent for these examples. Inshallah, we'll do that. Now, we were discussing, we said that the second inflection, the second type of inflection is the inflection of an-nasab. And we said that an-nasab has how many different, 5 different signs, right? An-nasab has the signs of an-nasab or al-fatha, al-alif, al-kasra, al-ya, and the omission of nun, meaning the removal of nun. I believe we had discussed alif, and do you guys remember where we left off last week? I believe we discussed the fact that we started discussing al-fatha, and when fatha becomes a sign of nasab, we said that if fatha becomes a sign of an-nasab in the singular noun, it becomes a sign of nasab in the broken plural. It becomes a sign of nasab in the imperfect verb, which has nothing attached to its end, and an agent of nasab has come before it. And I am not sure if we discussed al-alif, the fact that al-alif becomes a sign of nasab. So an alif also becomes a sign of nasab. The mu'allif, the author, rahimahullah, says, وَأَمَّا الْأَلِفُ فَتَكُونُ عَلَامَةً لِلنَّصْبِ في الأسماء الخمسة نحو رأيت أباك وأخاك وما أشبه ذلك. In the case of al-alif, it becomes a sign of an-nasab in the 5 exceptional nouns. Remember we mentioned 5 exceptional nouns, which were abuka, akhuka, hamuki, fuka, wa Jomal. And those exceptional nouns, the reason why we call them the 5 nouns or the 5 exceptional nouns is that they do not follow the default way of inflecting, or the default way nouns are inflected, because we said that by default now the inflection of nouns is by diacritical marks, but these 5 nouns, their inflection is with letters. So there are an exception to nouns, to the default way of nouns. Was there a question?
No, Sheikh.
Okay, so here, if you remember, we said the wow becomes a sign of rafa in the 5 exceptional nouns. Remember, we said, for example, the example that we gave was ja'a abuka, your dad came. Now here, it is to make it mansub, to give it the inflection of nasab, we replace that waw with an alif. For example, we say ra'aytu abaka, I saw your dad. Here, the father, in our previous example, in the case of rafa, the father was the subject. Your dad came, right? The coming was an action performed by the father. But in this case, you're saying ra'aytu abaka, I saw your dad. Is the dad still the subject? No, the subject is you. You are seeing it is the speaker. The speaker is the subject, and the father has become the object. And one of the roles of the sentence, which usually takes the inflection of a nasab, is an object. An object usually has the inflection of a nasab. So that is why here we have an alif instead of a waw, right? To indicate that abaka here is an object. To indicate that abaka is an object. Going through our sequence that we discussed. So we know that alif is a sign of nasab in the 5 exceptional nouns, right? And we see that there's an alif here. What does that tell us? That tells us that abaka is mansub, and we know that nasab is one of indicates the role of an object, indicates that whatever that has that inflection of nasab is an object. So we learned that this abaka is the object in the sentence. So from there we understand, we get an understanding of the sentence itself. Okay, the same thing with akhaka, your brother. So you apply the same concept to every other exceptional noun. And then وَأَمَّا الْكَسْرَةُ, so we are done here with the signs of nasab, right? So let me review them correctly. I'm sorry, not the signs of nasab. We are done with the places where al-fatha becomes the sign of nasab, right? So we said al-fatha becomes a sign of nasab. So we said fatha becomes a sign of nasab in 3 places. We completed that, and then we also completed now where al-alif becomes a sign of nasab, right? Now we are talking about al-kasra. How many have we done so far from the signs of nasab? How many have we completed? We said how many signs does nasab have? 5, right? What are those 5 signs? Who can tell me those 5 signs?
فتحة كسرة ألف
Yeah, and noon, the omission of noon.
Yes. Yes,
emission of
very good. Yeah, very good.
yeah.
Barakallah fikum. So now we very good. Jazakumullah khairan. So now we have completed. We mentioned where a fatha becomes a sign of nasab. We finished that, and also we mentioned where al alif becomes a sign of nasab. So there are 3 left still. We are left with al kasra, al ya, and the omission of noon. We still have not discussed that. So the author continues and tells us وَأَمَّا الْكَسْرَةُ فَتَكُونُ عَلَامَةً لِلنَّصْبِ فِي جَمْعِ الْمُؤَنَّثِ السَّالِمِ. In the case of al-kasra, it becomes a sign of nasab in the sound feminine plural. So for example, if I said رَأَيْتُ الْمُسْلِمَاتِ, this kasra here indicates the fact that al-muslimati is mansub. I saw the Muslim woman. The Muslim women are the object of the sentence. I believe we had gone through this, if I'm not mistaken, but it's a good review. Okay, and now وَأَمَّا الْيَاءُ, where does ya become a sign of nasab? وَأَمَّا الْيَاءُ فَتَكُونُ عَلَامَةً لِلنَّصْبِ في التثنية والجمع. In the case of al-ya, it becomes a sign of nasab in the dual noun and the plural noun. And the dual noun and the plural noun. So if you guys remember how do you make something dual in Arabic? We add, in the case of al-rafa, we had to add alif and nun, right? So al-muslim remain the same. So you bring al-muslim here and you just add an alif and nun to it. It becomes 2 Muslim men, but the inflection here is al-rafa. And then you do the same thing. You bring al-muslim here. You add a waw and a nun. The men, meaning 3 or more men, and you're adding a waw and a nun, which indicates the inflection of that the inflection is rafa, and that it is a plural. Now, here what we are saying is that in the case of ya becomes a sign of nasab, right? Ya becomes a sign of nasab in the dual and the plural. So what we have to do is replace this alif with a ya, and also replace this waw with a ya. So now we have again one Muslim man, two Muslim men, a group of Muslim men, singular, dual, plural. But in this case, it is they all have the inflection of an nasab. Therefore, we have replaced the alif with a ya and also the waw with a ya. So we have al-muslima, al-muslimaini, al-muslimina, al-muslima, al-muslimaini, al-muslimina. So this is where a ya becomes a sign of nasab. This is where a ya becomes a sign of nasab. Any questions about that? For example, the example that I have here, Ra'aytul Muslimaini. I saw the two Muslim men. I saw the two Muslim men. You see how there's a ya here? وَرَأَيْتُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. I saw the Muslim men, meaning the group of Muslim men. And you may say they both have the ya. How do you differentiate between the dual and the plural? Right? The way you differentiate between the dual and the plural is by looking at the letter before the ya and the letter after the ya. You see how the diacritical marks are switched around? So in the dual, the mim is maftuh, the noon is maksur. In the plural, the mim is maksur, the noon is maftuh. So it's the other way around.
But
okay.
If we don't have any diacritical marks there, normally we are supposed to understand this. Then how do we do that without the diacritical marks?
So exactly. So you would have to learn the context. Based on the context, you would have to know. Based on the context, you will know. Yeah. وأما حذف النون فيكون علامة للنصب في الأفعال الخمسة التي رفعها بثبات النون. In the case of the emission of a noon, it becomes a sign of a nasab in the 5 verbs which the existence of a noon is a sign of rafa, for which the existence of noon is the sign of a rafa. Remember we mentioned that in the 5 verbs, if you see the noon, that noon indicates the inflection of al-rafa. That noon indicates al-rafa. So when does the emission of noon become a sign of nasab? In those 5 verbs. In those 5 verbs for which noon is a sign of rafa. And we mentioned them: yaktubani, yaktubuna, taktubani, taktubuna, taktubina. These are the 5 verbs. And the example I have is lan yaktubu, they will not write. They will not write. And okay. Any questions? Because we have completed the signs of nasab now. We have completed the signs of nasab. Just to recap, so we are all on the same page. We have said that there are 4 different types of inflections: al-rafa, al-nasab, al-khafd, and al-jazm. And we said each of these inflections has its own signs. How do we know when something is marfu'? How do we know when something is mansub? How do we know when something is makhfud? How do we know when something is majzoom? By through these signs that the author is telling us. We said that the signs of al-rafa were 4. We mentioned them. We said al-dhamma. We said al-waw. We said al-alif, and then we said al-nun, right? And we mentioned every single one, where every single one of those becomes a sign of rafa. And then we mentioned al-nasab, and we also mentioned the signs of nasab, which were 5. Al-fatha, al-alif, al-kasra, al-ya, وحذف النون. We have just now completed all those signs and where they become a sign of nasab. Now we are moving on to
Khafd.
al-khafd. Yes. Okay. Where are my slides for this? Okay, so we will do this the old way, brothers. I will. So the traditional way of studying this is without slides. So the teacher just reads it from the book and then he explains it. It seems like I do not have these slides for this lesson. I thought I had, quite frankly. That is why I did not create one before. But I will go ahead and read it from the book, inshallah, and then we will discuss this. And then after the class, I will add the slides for your reference. But it should be fine. I will go ahead and explain it. And when I need to write something on the slides, I will write it for you. The author says, وَلِلْخَفْضِ ثَلَاثُ عَلَامَاتٍ. The inflection of al-khafd has 3 signs. Just like the inflection of al-rafa had 4 signs, and the inflection of al-nasab had 5 signs, the inflection of al-khafd has 3 signs. What are those signs? Al-kasratu wal-ya wal-fatha. Al-kasra wal-ya wal-fatha. Al-kasra wal-ya wal-fatha. Let me write this down. للخفض 3 علامات. الكسرة الياء. I guess this is how teachers teach at school as well, right? They will say something and then we'll go write it on the board. So
Yes.
this is where you wait for the teacher to write it on the board, except we're doing it virtually. Okay. Okay, so as I said, the author is saying that khafd has 3 signs: al-kasra, al-ya, al-fatha. We all know what al-kasra is, right? Al-kasra is the diacritical mark, and al-ya is the letter ya. Al-fatha is the diacritical mark, al-fatha. Now, where do these become a sign of nasab?
Sign of Khafd.
Sign of khafd. Very good. Where sometimes these mistakes are not intentional, but they're good because they keep you awake.
Yes.
It's a good excuse for me, right?
Yes.
So the author says, فَأَمَّا الْكَسْرَةُ فَتَكُونُ عَلَامَةً لِلْخَفْضِ في 3 مواضع.
Brother Sahel, what page is this?
This is page 10. This is page 10. I just had a question for everyone else. Do you have, I had provided a hard PDF copy of the book in my first email, which was different than the slides. One thing you can do right now, you can open that and follow along if you have it. If you do not have it, that's fine. You can just follow along with me, inshallah. Should be fine. في الاسم المفرد منصرف وجمع التكسير منصرف وجمع المؤنث السالم. Okay, so what does the author say here? فأما الكسرة فتكون علامة للخفض في ثلاثة مواضع. In the case of al-kasra, it becomes a sign of khafd in three places. So we're going through these signs of khafd, which are al-kasra, al-ya, and al-fatha. And for each of them, we're gonna discuss where they become a sign of al-khafd. The first one is al-kasra. In the case of al-kasra, it becomes a sign of al-khafd in three places. في الاسم المفرد المنصرف. In the singular noun that is munsarif. Now we have to introduce a new concept here, which is the concept of al-munsarif. So we have inflection or declension. So inflection is the English word for al-i'rab, right? There's another word for al-i'rab, which is declination, declension in English, and this word declension what does it mean in the grammar of Latin area, Greek or other languages? The variation of the form of a noun, pronoun, or adjective by which its grammatical case, number, and gender are identified. So this is what how it relates to Latin, Greek, and other languages. But in Arabic, like I said, when we say declension or when we say inflection, what we mean by it is specifically the change that occurs at the end, right? Now, if a noun is al-munsarif, it means it accepts all diacritical marks. If a noun is al-munsarif, it accepts all diacritical marks. If a noun is not munsarif, it means it does not accept tanween, nor does it accept kasra. So I want you to take notes because this is not part of the book. Again, I'll repeat it. If a noun is munsarif, it means it accepts all diacritical marks. If it is not munsarif, it means it does not accept kasra, nor does it accept tanween. Now, the way we call it is fully declinable and partially. Yeah. So if a noun is so if a noun is al-munsarif, that means it accepts all diacritical marks. Tanween, fatha, kasra, dhamma, everything. If a noun is not munsarif, it means it does not accept tanween, nor does it accept kasra. It does not accept tanween, nor does it accept kasra. And the way we call this, al-munsarif would be fully declinable, or yes, it would be fully declinable, and غير munsarif would be partially declinable. When we say partially, it means it accepts only a part of diacritical. It partially accepts diacritical marks. It partially accepts diacritical marks. Right. fully declinable and partially declinable. Okay, so now that we know, because this is gonna, we need to make distinction, because when we talk about where al-fatha becomes a sign of al-khafd, this will come back. If you do not understand what al-munsarif or fully declinable means here, we will not be able to understand where fatha becomes a sign of al-khafd. So al-kasra, as the author says, becomes a sign of al-khafd and the singular noun, which is fully declinable. Now, how do we? Now, the example that we can give for that is marartu bi Zaydin. Marartu bi Zaydin. I want you to look at bi Zaydin and tell me what inflection does Zayd have?
Kasratin.
Kasrat. So that inflection. So now I want you to look at what comes before Zayd and tell me what is this a sign of nouns, verbs, or particles? The ba.
Sign for noun.
It's not noun.
Nouns. Exactly. It was one of the particles of khafd. Remember, it was one of the
Yes.
particles of al-khafd. So this ba indicates that Zayd should be makhfud, and this tanween, this kasr 10, is as a result of this ba. This ba has caused Zayd to become makhfud, right? Now, the reason I bring this up is because we're saying kasra becomes a sign of al-khafd in 3 places. One of those places is the singular noun that is fully declinable. Now, going through the same process that we had before, we know that kasra is a sign of what? Is a sign. We know that Zayd is a singular noun, and we know that in the singular noun, a kasra is a sign of khafd. Therefore, we know Zayd is makhfud in the sentence, right? So marartu bi Zaydin. What does marartu bi Zaydin mean? I passed by Zayd. I passed by Zayd. I passed by Zayd. I passed by Zayd. The next place where it becomes kasra becomes a sign of nasb or a sign of khafd is the broken plural that is fully declinable. Just like for the singular noun, we had fully declinable and partially declinable. For the broken plural, also we have fully declinable and partially declinable. And where does kasra become a sign of khafd? For the broken for so yeah, where does kasra become a sign of khafd besides the singular noun and the broken plural? In the broken plural that is fully declinable. So we can give it the same example that we gave last time. Marartu bir-rijali. Ar-rijal is a broken plural that is fully declinable, and here we put a kasra here because there is a ba indicates that ar-rijal is makhfud, meaning it has the inflection of khafd, and we know that rijal is the broken plural. Therefore, we have to give it the kasra. We have to give it the kasra to indicate it is makhfud. Does everyone follow this? If at any time I lose you, please stop me so we can explain more. And the third place where kasra becomes a sign of khafd is the sound feminine plural. The sound feminine plural. The sound feminine plural. And if you remember, the way we make something plural, feminine plural, is by adding an alif and a ta to the end. So for the example that I will give is the same thing. Marartu, meaning I passed by. Bil Muslimati. I passed by the Muslim woman. I passed by the Muslim woman. Okay. So again, quickly, we're talking about the inflection of al-khafd. Al-khafd has three signs: al-kasra, al-fatha, al-kasra, al-ya, and al-fatha. Now we are specifically looking at al-kasra, and where al-kasra becomes a sign of al-khafd. Al-kasra becomes a sign of al-khafd in three places: in the singular noun that is fully declinable, in the broken plural that is fully declinable, and in the sound feminine plural. In these three places, kasra will become a sign of al-khafd. Okay. Do you want me to just quickly translate it here? Yes.
Sheikh, I have a question. Yeah. You've already mentioned that singular noun and broken plural are both al-munsaraf. That means they are
Yes.
both fully declinable. What about
Yes.
the sound plural, sound feminine plural? Is it also al-munsaraf?
Yes. So with the sound feminine plural, we would consider, we would say it is al-munsarif. But there is a slight there's something that needs to be mentioned here, and that is that al-muslimat does not accept a fatha. Al-Muslim.
Oh.
So, for example, but that does not indicate in the terminology of the Arab grammarians, that does not indicate being partially declinable. In the terminology of Arab grammarians, a partially declinable noun is only a noun that does not accept tanween
Tanween and
and
kasra.
kasra. Yeah, tanween al-kasra. And al-muslimat does accept both kasra and tanween. It just doesn't accept al-fatha.
Okay.
So I just so linguistically, I guess al-muslimat is not fully declinable, because it does not accept al-fatha, because it does not accept all diacritical marks. But in the terminology, if you want to speak in the terminology of grammarians, yeah, we wouldn't say al-muslimat is غير منصرف. Al-muslimat is just there's another the way we explain al-muslimat and why it doesn't take al-fatha is we explain it in a different way, which we'll explain inshallah in the later chapters, but not now. I'll explain it later inshallah. So any other questions here before we move on?
No, Sheikh.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll add the translations for you after, unless if you would like me to add it right now. Which one would you prefer? Have it right now and look at it, or continue and add it right after the class?
Sheikh, we should move forward.
Okay. So the next section would be now we spoke about al-kasra. Where does ya become a sign of khafd? وأما الياء فتكون علامة للخفض في ثلاثة مواضع. Ya as well becomes a sign of al-khafd in three places. Ya as well becomes a sign of al-khafd in three places.
Which page is it in the book? Page 7?
It's 10.
10.
Page 10, but I believe you may have a different version.
Sheikh, I tried to look
Yes,
at page 10 of that book, but I don't think it correlates.
it may
Is it?
perhaps not. Let me open that. Inshallah, inshallah, let's it's fine. Let's continue with just what I am writing right now. I will after the class I will resend you that book and tell you what page we are on. I don't want to. I don't want to waste any more time of your any of your time. I've already wasted a lot of your time, so I apologize for that. But remember, this is all part of learning knowledge. You have to be patient sometimes.
Yes, Sheikh.
Remember, I told you my stories, so I guess this is a test for you.
May I ask something to you about this class?
Yes, please.
Is it possible to make it a bit more easier?
In what sense? What is difficult for you?
I guess like in the beginning to understand the rules is difficult without much of implication. Like if we could imply the rules by learning by doing, I mean.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. With practical examples.
Yes,
Is that
I
what you mean?
mean, like, yeah,
Yeah, that's good.
because the
I mean
grammar
that.
is very difficult.
Yeah, I see. I see your point. So this is what we can do. I mean, I can this I can remember the first few classes I brought some examples from the Quran, and I was planning to do that once we go through all these signs. So we all have all of them at we do all of them, give examples for all of them at the same time. But I think what I will do from now on is after every lesson, inshallah, we'll give an example from the Quran and translate it, and I will show you how these diacritical marks change the meaning of the verse, or
Inshallah.
show the meaning of the verse, and inshallah
Jazakallah.
that will make it easier on you, inshallah. But
Inshallah.
yeah, this inshallah, inshallah, if we have time at the end of this lesson, inshallah, we'll give
Inshallah.
one quick example, inshallah. So the author says, وَأَمَّا الْيَاءُ فَتَكُونُ عَلَامَةً لِلْخَفْضِ فِي ثَلَاثَةِ مَوَاضِعَ. In the case of al-ya, it becomes a sign of al-khafd in three places. في الأسماء الخمسة, in the five exceptional nouns, وفي التثنية, and the dual noun, والجمع, and in the plural noun. Okay, so the example for أسماء الخمسة, you would say مررت بأبيك. You see the siya here? I passed by your father. Why is there a ya here? Because there is one of the particles of khafad right before abika, so it changes the inflection to al-ya. In the tathniya, you say marartu bil muslimaini. The same thing. We already discussed how ya becomes a sign of a nasab, and this is the dual noun. We already discussed how ya becomes a sign of a nasab in the dual noun. The same concept, the same thing applies for the khafad. Ya becomes a sign of khafad as well in the dual noun. Okay, ya becomes a sign of al-khafad as well in the dual noun. And the way you can differentiate whether it is mahfud or mansub, whether it has the sign of it has the inflection of a nasab or khafad, is through what comes before it. If what comes before it is an agent of khafad, you know it is what? It is mahfud. If it's not an agent of a khafad, but rather it is an object in the sentence, or any other role that takes nasab, that has nasab as its inflection, then you would know that that dual is mansub. Okay, so but here in this case it's easy. Marartu bil muslimaini. I passed by the two Muslim men. You know that this ya indicates al-khafad because there is a particle of khafad right at the beginning of the word, right? And then also in al-jama', you say, for example, marartu مسلمين مررت بالمسلمين.
I have a question.
Yes.
So for khafid, the indicator will always be ba.
Yeah, so for khafad, I remember we mentioned all those particles of khafad at the beginning. We said min. When we were talking about the signs of nouns, we said one of the signs of nouns are the particles of khafad. So all those particles will indicate khafad. All of those particles, if they come before a noun, will indicate that noun is makhfud. And there are also some other things which we will discuss, but for the most part, the majority of nouns that are makhfud or have the inflection of al-khafad have it because of the particle of khafad, because of those particles. Good question. Jazakumullah khairan. Very good question. Okay, so here again, for the plural, we said ya becomes a sign of nasab in the plural, but also it becomes a sign of al-khafad in the plural, right? Again, how do you know whether it is a sign of nasab or is a sign of khafad? You know it by looking at what comes before it. You know it by looking at the context of the sentence. Okay. Inshallah, I will translate this slide as well after. Any questions from this slide?
Sheikh, could you just go over the entire thing once more? The dual, the first two are the dual form of the noun and the plural form of the noun, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the third one was?
Oh, the first one was the 5 exceptional nouns. That was the first one, the 5 exceptional nouns. So in the 5 exceptional nouns, a ya becomes a sign of khafad. And then in the dual noun, a ya becomes a sign of al-khafad. And then in the plural as well, a ya becomes a sign of al-khafad.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah. And then now fatha, this is the last thing we'll discuss today, inshallah. Actually, I think today we have read more than we've ever read before, to be honest with you. I'm looking at the page, we've read like 2/3 of a page. We've never read 2/3 of a page before. So that's good. Alhamdulillah. وأما الفتحة فتكون علامة للخفض في الاسم الذي لا ينصرف. Okay, so this is easy. In the case of al-fatha, we said al-khafd had how many signs? 3 signs. What was the first one? Al-kasra. What was the second one? Al-ya. What was the third one? Al-fatha. We went through al-kasra, we went through al-ya, and now we are discussing the third sign of al-khafd, which is al-fatha. Where does al-fatha become a sign of al-khafd? وأما الفتحة فتكون علامة للخفض في الاسم الذي لا ينصرف. Fatha becomes a sign of khafd in the noun that is partially declinable. See, now it comes back. Now you know why we mentioned what declinable means. Fatha becomes a sign of nasab, khafd. Fatha becomes a sign of khafd in the noun that is partially declinable. And therefore, and we said partially declinable noun is either a singular noun or a broken plural from our previous when we were mentioning the fully declinable, we mentioned both, right? You mentioned the singular noun that is fully declinable and the broken plural that is fully declinable. And the reason the author doesn't specify and just says noun, he relies on your intelligence, on our intelligence, to know that when he mentioned fully declinable, he mentioned the singular noun and the broken plural. So therefore, when he mentions noun here, without restricting it to either being singular or broken plural, he relies on our intelligence and memory to know that by noun he means the singular noun here, and also he means the broken plural. في الاسم الذي لا ينصرف. And so fatha becomes a sign of al-khafd in the noun that is partially declinable. That is partially declinable. An example for the singular noun would be marartu bi Ahmada. Marartu bi Ahmada. Marartu bi Ahmada. Ahmad is a noun. Ahmad is a singular noun. Ahmad is a singular noun, but it has it has two qualities that prevent it from being fully declinable. So you may ask another question, more general question you may have is, how do we know why are certain words fully declinable and why are certain words partially declinable? Right? Why are certain words fully declinable? Why are the other words partially declinable? The reason is, in Arabic, if a noun has two insufficiencies or has two imperfections in it, if a noun has two imperfections in it, it becomes partially declinable. If a noun has two imperfections in it, it becomes partially declinable. Now the imperfections are mentioned in the commentaries and more advanced books, but for now you don't need to know all those imperfections because it will make it just more complicated, and this is really not the time to explain those for you. But just know, just so you have an idea of why this is happening. This noun that we have here has two imperfections. The noun itself, please do not associate the noun to the noun for which the noun is, for the person for which the noun is used for, or for the place for which the noun is used for. We're talking linguistically that the noun has two imperfections. But we know the owner of this noun, or the person who is called by this name, is the perfect human being, right? So I want you to make that distinction, inshallah. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Marartu bi Ahmada. So here, Ahmad, if we follow the rules, this is a particle of khafad, right? So Ahmad should be makhfud, and the sign of al-khafad is kasra, right? Like the main sign of al-khafad is kasra, just like every other example that we gave, where for kasra, remember we gave for the fully declinable, we had a noun, and the sign of khafad became kasra, and that is the default position. That is the default whenever we want to make a singular noun makhfud or give it the inflection of al-khafad, we give it al-kasra. But here we're not following that rule. Even though it's a singular noun, we're putting a fatha to indicate khafad. Why? Because this noun is partially declinable. It does not accept a kasra or tanween. It does not accept kasra or tanween. Now this goes back to our definition of partially declinable and fully declinable. That is why I defined it for you in a few slides back. Because a partially declinable noun does not accept a kasra or tanween, we are only left with al-fatha, right? And you may say, why fatha? Why not dhamma? since we can't give it a kasra or tanween, why have we chosen a fatha and not a dhamma? Because a kasra is a fatha is lighter on the tongue, right? So when we are forced to change the diacritical mark of something, the Arabs always they like things that are light on the tongue, that are easy to pronounce. A fatha is easier to pronounce than a dhamma, therefore we're giving it a fatha, right? Which one is easier for you to pronounce? You say Ahmada or Ahmadu?
Ahmada.
Ahmada, right? So that is why for partially declinable nouns, a fatha becomes a sign of khafd. Now this is for the singular noun. For the broken plural, the broken plural, an example for the broken plural would be marartu so marartu bi masajida. Marartu bi masajida. I passed by the masjids. I passed by the masjids. These days, if you go to Muslim countries, like every like masjids are neighbors. You know, there are a few masjids that are like right next to each other.
Yes.
So you can actually pass by a few masjids at the same time within the span of 5 minutes. So marartu bi masajida. Marartu bi masajida. I passed by the masjids. Masajid is a broken plural. Why is it a broken plural? Because the form of the original form of masajid is what is it? One how do you say one mosque in Arabic?
Masajid.
Yeah, that's plural. Masajid is many. How do you say just one mosque? Just one. Masjid.
Masjid. Okay. Yeah.
Masjid.
Masjid.
Yeah.
Yes.
So masjid. You see how the form of masjid has been broken. So between the sin and the jim, we broke the sin and the jim and we added an alif in between.
Alif.
So the form of the noun has been broken. Therefore, to make the plural, therefore it is a broken plural. But if we were to follow the rule, you would say masjidin. That is how you make something plural, sound plural. That is mahfuz. Marartu bi masjidina. But that's not how you a masjid. That is not how you make it plural. It has a broken plural, which is masajid. And here masajid, it has two imperfections. Actually, it has one imperfection, because the imperfection that exists in masajid is enough. This one imperfection is enough to make it partially declinable. That is why we say marartu bi masajida. Marartu bi masajida. We don't say marartu bi masajidin. We don't say marartu bi masajidin. Why don't we say marartu bi masajidin? Because a partially declinable noun does not accept tanween, nor does it accept kasra, right? Right? Does everyone follow?
Yes, Sheikh.
Okay. Well, alhamdulillah, we have
Yes.
complete. Jazakumullah khairan for confirming. We have completed 3 inflections. We have completed the inflection of al-rafa, the inflection of al-nasab, and al-khafd. The only thing that is left is the inflection of al-jazm.
Jazam.
Yeah, inshallah, which will complete next week. But I mean, I think you should be very proud of yourself for staying in the class and and being patient, because we have covered a lot, and inshallah it will benefit you when you read the Quran. So now let me give you a verse from the Quran. Actually, well, I'll give a verse that I'll put a verse that brother Muhammad can relate to, since he is in Quds right now. Subhanalladhi.
I knew it.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى. Pure of all imperfections, pure of all impurities, is the one who took his servant on a night journey from the Masjid of Al-Haram, the sacred mosque, to the Masjid of Al-Aqsa, the farthest mosque. Asra bi'abdihi. What do you say here? What do you see here? What is this that I have highlighted, or I will highlight in a second? What is B? What is this ba?
The sign of khafad.
Okay,
No,
so what? Yes, you're right. It is one of the signs of khafad. It is a particle of khafad. So what diacritical mark should I give abd here? Abd, just to let you know, abd is a singular noun. Wow. Kasra. Yeah, you went through all of them until you got it. Yes, Fatha, bi'abdihi. Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi. Okay. Laylan, what does this mean? Who remembers what mean is?
Sheikh, it's still the sign of kafad.
Yes. And
Yes,
what
it
is
is.
masjid? We were just talking about masjid right now. What is masjid?
Singular noun.
Singular noun. So what diacritical mark should I give it? What inflection does it take?
Kasratin.
So would take kasratin, and I will explain to you why it will just take kasra and not kasratin in this case. But the diacritical mark would be a kasra in this case, and the inflection would be al-khafad, because this is one of the particles of al-khafad. And the reason we don't give it a tanween kasratin is because there is an alif and lam here. We said an alif and lam is the article of the definite article. Alif and lam in Arabic is the definite article. It means the masjid, right? And tanween indicates that the noun is indefinite. Tanween is, you could say, is in the indefinite article. So you cannot combine the definite article and the indefinite article at the same time, right? You cannot say an apple. An apple. It would make sense. You would either say the apple, or you would say an apple, right? So in this case, because there is alif and lam, you don't say al masjidin, you would say al masjidi, so that the definiteness of the noun is conveyed. Laylan min al masjidil harami. Min al masjidil harami. What is this? Ila. You guys should know this as well.
Same, Sheikh. It's the particle of kafad. Min, ila, an,
Yes.
ala. All of
Yeah,
those.
very good. Barakallah fiqh. So here, al-masjid. So if you were to read the Quran without the inflections, without the diacritical marks, you would know that this has to be kasra. So you would read it bi-abdihi, by yourself, right now by yourself, without anyone's help. You would know that this is al-masjidi. You wouldn't say al-masjidu or al-masjida. You would say min al-masjidi. And then here you would say ila al-masjid. What diacritical mark does it take here?
Kasra.
Kasra, very good. See?
Because
Because
of
of
the
ila.
yes.
Yes. So here,
And
so
also,
just, yeah.
Sheikh, I was just saying, also because of the alif lam, right?
Yeah, alif lam does prevents it from having tanween. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So here, now you just reading the Quran, just looking at a part of this verse, you were able to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So out of 11 words, you were able to get the diacritical mark of 3 of them right. Just if you think about it that way, that is a lot of progress in
Yes.
3 or 4 weeks, right? Alhamdulillah. So that's one example. Let me give you another example that that will have okay. So this is the last example that we'll give. Well, we will give. Make sure I have the ayah correct. Do you know this example, brother Muhammad?
Yes. And I was expecting this. I was thinking to Allah belongs the East and the West.
Yes, Alhamdulillah.
Good.
But there's another thing here that relates to where you are. I'll explain that in a second.
Inshallah. Virtually where I am.
Let me just copy and paste this just to make sure I don't. سيقول السفهاء من الناس. Okay. Oh, but this is not good because it already has all the diacritical marks. I was trying to close your eyes just for 1 second till I finish all these. Okay. All right, open your eyes. Okay. The scene. What does the scene? Who remembers what the scene is?
It's the particle of the verb. Immediate, a verb that occurs immediately.
Yes, very good.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
it defines the immediateness of the verb occurring.
Very good. Barakallah fikum. It is one of the signs of verbs, and it indicates immediateness, meaning the verb, the action that is about to be performed, it is about to be performed immediately after the verb is mentioned. So that means this is a verb. And we also said, if you remember, we said the scene enters the imperfect verbs, not just any verb. It does not enter past tense verbs, nor does it come before the imperative. It comes only before the imperfect verb. So we know that this is the imperfect verb, and we know what is the inflection of this imperfect verb. It has nothing attached to its end, meaning it has no pronouns attached to its end, right? What is the inflection of this imperfect verb? I'll give you a small hint if you guys need one. We said that an imperfect verb that has nothing attached to its end, right, and has none of the agents of nasab or jazm is what? The inflection would be, so if it's not majzoom and if it's not mansub, what is the inflection? What inflection are we left with?
Rafa.
Rafa. So it is marfu'. And we said with the imperfect verb that has nothing attached to its end, what is I'm sorry, give me 1 sec. Am I still sharing my screen?
No, Sheikh.
Okay. Okay. Is it back?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I was trying to make this bigger, but because I want more people to participate in the I think only 2 people have their cameras on right now. So as always, if there's nothing blocking you from turning your camera on, please turn it on. So just for the part of interaction part, because the interaction part is very important in learning. So سيقول السفهاء. Therefore, this takes so this is the imperfect verb, and it has nothing attached to its end, nor does it have any agents of nasab or jazm. Therefore, it is marfu'. What is the sign of rafa for the imperfect verb that has nothing attached to its end? It is ad-dhamma. So you would say سيقول. So just based on what we have discussed so far, you would know what the scene is, and because there's nothing attached to this, and you know that there's a ya here. Remember we said ya is one of the 4 letters that indicates the mudara or imperfectness of the verb. Remember when we were talking about the verb conjugations? Let me go back to that slide.
No, he's still on. There's 8 people in the call.
Remember when we were talking about inflections, we said anaitu, the letters that come before the verb, they are all what? They indicate that the verb is imperfect. And those 4 letters were hamza, noon, ya, and ta. Hamza, noon, ya, and ta. Remember that these 4 letters indicate that the verb is what? Is imperfect.
Yes.
Okay. Now let's go back to our slide from today. Now here we see a ya. What does this indicate? You know this is a verb. So then what do you know what does that ya tell you about the verb?
Imperfect verb.
Yeah, it tells you it is an imperfect verb. It tells you it is an imperfect verb. Okay, so you know scene. You already know what scene is based on what we have discussed. You already know what ya is. It is the sign of imperfectness, right? It is a sign that a verb is imperfect. And therefore, you know that this is a verb imperfect. This is an imperfect verb. And then you also know that there is nothing attached to its end. And there are no agents of nasab or jazm before it. Therefore, you know that this verb is marfu'. From that, you know that it should have a dhamma. So you will pronounce it sayaqulu, right? Sayaqulu. And then you will have as-sufaha. Yaqulu. Now here, you would need to know some Arabic vocab, but that's easy. You can just put this in the dictionary and it will tell you. Yaqulu is an imperfect verb, and it means they will say. They will say. They will say. Let me remove the pronoun. More accurately, it is will say. Will say. But who is the subject? A verb needs a subject, right? Who is it that will say? And by default, the subject comes right after the verb. So you know that this is what? This is the subject. So the people that are saying are as-sufaha. This is a description of the subject. These are the subject. And as-sufaha means the not very intelligent people. So to put it more bluntly, stupid people. The stupid people. The people that are not very wise. Will say the stupid people, meaning people that are not very wise. Minan nas, from people. Meaning we'll say those who are not very intelligent from people. And you know what min is? Min is what?
Particle of noun. Particle of kafat.
Particle of khafad. Yes, very good. And therefore, you know what is the inflection of an-nas?
Kasratin.
Kasratin. It would be, but there's an alif and lam here.
Oh yeah, just kasra.
Kasra, very good.
Ustaz, I have a question.
Yes.
For indefinite verb to occur and to, choose a subject, an indefinite verb can never choose a singular subject. It has to always choose a plural subject in case of Arabic language, if I'm not wrong.
You mean the imperfect verb?
Yes, because imperfect verb will work only with indefinite nouns, right?
No, imperfect verb can work with anything. Just like in English, how it would be. You can have a singular noun, you can have an indefinite, you can have a definite. For example, you say, an apple fell from the tree, or the apple fell from the tree, right? Or
Yes.
an apple will fall from the tree, and the apple will fall from the tree. The apples will fall from the tree. So you can have a singular pronoun, definite, indefinite. The subject can be anything you can think of.
But it's not going to sound the same. Like yaqulu or like yaqulu, the storm.
Yes. Yeah, very good. So yaqulu, okay, so you're asking something that requires some very in-depth explanation. Even though yaqulu is for there are no pronouns attached to it, because there are no pronouns attached to the yaqulu, whatever comes after it will dictate singularity or plurality. Because there are no pronouns attached to sayaqulu, whatever comes after it will dictate what? Singularity or plurality. So in this case, it is plural, sufaha, stupid. It is the plural of light-headed or not very wise people. But I could have said sayaqulu safihu, meaning the one unintelligent person. I could have said that, but if there is a pronoun attached to the end of the verb, then we don't have to explicitly mention the subject, because the pronoun will be the subject.
As you mentioned before, that we will understand it from the situation, from the yes.
Yeah, so exactly. So if the subject is explicitly mentioned before the verb, then for the verb a pronoun will suffice, because the pronoun will be referring back to the subject that has been previously mentioned.
Right.
Yep. Jazakumullah khairan. So here, سيقول السفهاء. السفهاء is the broken plural. What is the broken plural? What is the inflection of the broken plural if it's marfu'? Because we know that is the subject here, it is marfu'. What inflection should be, or what is the diacritical mark that it gets here? It is the subject. Remember, we said the singular noun and the broken plural, when they become marfu', when they are subject, they are marfu'. And the sign of rafa for the singular noun and the broken plural is al-dhamma. So you would say sayaqulu. This is, we figured this out. As-sufaha'u, we figured this out as well. And nasi, we figured this out as well. So based on what we have just studied, you know how to read the first section of the verse correctly without, obviously you have to memorize what we have studied, so it comes immediately. But what we have studied, if you go back to it and memorize the whole thing, you will be able to recite the first part of this verse without any diacritical marks. سيقول السفهاء من الناس. And then ما ولاهم عن قبلتهم التي كانوا عليها. What was it that pushed them away from the qibla that they used to face towards? Because initially our qibla, the qibla of Muslims was what? Was Jerusalem, was Al-Quds. And then Allah Azza wa Jal decreed that the qibla has to change to Al-Kaaba. And when that happened, a lot of people, a lot of not very intelligent people, they started questioning this and saying, what was it that turned people away from the Masjid al-Aqsa? What was it that pushed them back from, stopped them, prevented them from facing Masjid al-Aqsa, from facing the previous qibla that they were upon? قل, say to them, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, لله المشرق والمغرب. To Allah belongs the east and the west. يهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. He guides whomever he wishes towards the straight path. Okay, so now here, I think this was a good example. It had a lot, and it had the imperfect verb, it had the broken plural, it had the particle of khafad, it had the indefinite article, it had the inflection of khafad, the inflection of rafa. It had a lot. Just this section of the verse was packed with things that we've already studied. Okay, and we don't have much time. I could give you more examples from the verse, but inshallah we'll stop here. Any questions?
Sheikh, I would like to ask something.
Yes.
In Arabic, whenever we are given a singular form of a noun and would like to make it into a plural form, how would we know that would the plural form be a sound plural, or the plural would be a broken plural? Do you have to just memorize that?
Yeah, very good question. So for the most part, at the beginning, what I will expect you is to just follow the rule, the qaida, to make it sound plural. Everything you see, make it a sound plural. Okay.
Oh.
But to know the broken plural, this is something you'll have to get used to. It is by hearing Arabs and the way they speak. So we have two things in the Arabic language. We have some things that are qiyasi and things that are sama'i. Things that are qiyasi are those who have rules and guidelines which you can follow to apply to different things, right? And the sound plural is qiyasi, meaning it has a rule which you can use to apply to every other noun that you want to make plural. But those things that are sama'i, those things are things that you hear from the Arab. And you would not know whether a noun is the sound plural or the broken plural or you would not know whether a noun will have the broken plural unless you heard it from the Arabs.
All right.
So it is they that decide. It is not,
Okay.
we cannot use the rules and guidelines. But that is a very good question. So that is something you will have to memorize, and through practice and through listening to Arabs and reading Arabic books, that's how you learn. That's how you'll know. Jazakumullah khairan for a good question. Any other questions before we conclude?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Once we get past Jazm, are we gonna be reviewing like occasionally?
Once
we to like make sure that we have everything down and like
Okay.
fully understood.
Yeah, so once we complete Al-Jazm next week, and we talk about the science of Al-Jazm, I will, because it won't take us very long, maybe we can finish that in 20 minutes, and I will spend the other 40 minutes we have in the class just to quickly go over everything that we have talked about. And next week, inshallah, we'll have a quiz.
Okay.
So after I review everything, which will be a review for the quiz, basically, we'll have a quick quiz, and I will decide whether I want it to be a verbal quiz or a written quiz. But inshallah, next week we will have a quiz. So please prepare for the quiz. But good. I mean, to answer your question, we will review every time we finish a chapter of the book. We will review the whole chapter, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Sheikh,
Yes.
could you give us some verses such as these so that we could engage ourselves during the weekdays before the next class?
This can be
Yeah,
added
inshallah.
later, inshallah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, inshallah, I will add 2 or 3 verses for you to the slide. Inshallah, I'll make another slide. The 44th slide will have 3 examples for you to practice, inshallah.
All right, Sheikh.
And there is an application that we can also use for the quiz, Sheikh.
What is it?
I actually forgot. I saw it in one of the online classes in Facebook. They like simultaneously they use this application to do quizzes like while teaching.
Okay.
Google Classroom.
I am not sure. I completely forgot, brother. I downloaded it. I kept it and then I deleted it.
Okay.
But I'll
So
look
since
inshallah in my iCloud and let's and hope that I can find it inshallah.
inshallah, if you find it, just send it to us through WhatsApp, inshallah. Okay, sounds good. جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Inshallah, I will see you next week. بارك الله فيكم.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
عليكم
السلام
السلام
عليكم
ورحمة الله
ورحمة الله.
وبركاته. عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.